This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hey guys, in this video I'm going to go over how I made the skirts for my Witch Mercy cosplay. So to start off, I'm taking a pattern that I made and cutting out the fabric. All of the patterns for my Witch Mercy costume can be found on my store Envy. The fabric that I'm using to create the skirts is just a super cheap cotton fabric that I found at a local fabric store. It's nothing too fancy. Once I have the skirts cut out, I go ahead and at first I patterned it out on the piece of paper that I was using to kind of figure out how I wanted the spikes to go on the bottom. I based this off of reference photos, obviously, to try to get it as close as possible. And then I cut that out onto the actual skirt itself. And then I took a piece of fine grit sandpaper and sanded around the edges just to kind of give it a worn look, because her skirt is, you know, damaged, worn, or whatever. But for the second skirt, I decided to just draw it out freehand style directly onto the skirt itself, because it didn't need to be perfect, and I just tried to add jagged edges wherever it looked like there were jagged edges on her game model.
Don't look back, we're here to stay, a life we knew.
I did the same thing for the two yellow skirt pieces.
The borderline to where the future leaves us behind. The fire will burn and never die, looking through the eyes of a brand new life. The soldiers fly.
After that, I mixed some dye together. It's RIT dye that I used for this, yellow and red, in order to create orange, because my store didn't have orange. Mixed that together and followed the instructions as best as possible. It wasn't exact. Instead of boiling water, I used the hottest temperature my sink got. But the fabric that I chose dyes really, really easily, and I knew that, so I wasn't too worried about it being, you know, super perfect, because it still took the dye fairly well. Probably could have even used cold water and it would have stuck. Anyways, I tried my best to do a dip dye kind of technique by sitting the edge that's like fading into yellow for the shortest amount of time in the dye, and then pulling it out slightly and setting that part for just a little bit longer, pulling it out slightly more again, setting that for even longer, and so on until the fabric was completely pulled out. And I think it turned out pretty okay. Next, I tried to dye the ends of the tan skirts to make it look kind of like dirty and muddy, because that's how hers looks in-game. And I used some watered down coffee and realized I used too much water and the coffee just wasn't staining it at a certain point. So I scrapped that idea, and later on in just a couple clips here, you'll see that I switched to mixing acrylic paint and water and just painting it on messily with a paintbrush and kind of like flicking the brush so that you get the drop effect, like it had been splattered instead. To finish off the skirt, I sewed the skirts together. So I sewed the yellow on top of the tan on both the front and back sides, and then attached those pieces to little small pieces of elastic so that I could easily pull it on and off. And that was it for this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it helpful, and stay tuned or subscribe or whatever for future videos. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day. Bye!